Welcome to our lesson today on migraine mindset. So these are the topics that we're going to be covering: acceptance, self-awareness, migraine confidence, fixed versus growth mindset, connection, and self-compassion. So we're going to get started with acceptance. And really what this comes down to, we're going to talk today about the 5 stages of grief. And it may seem a strange thing to talk about when we're talking about grief, but when we're accepting the fact that we have this condition called migraine, it is almost like it is a grieving process, because we're grieving for our health or our lack of health. And so today I want to talk about the 5 stages of grief and how we can get to the acceptance stage and actually accepting the fact that we have this condition. And then from there, we can go on and working out what we can do about it. So when we look at the 5 stages of grief, the first stage is denial, and it's a defense mechanism. Thoughts like, this is not happening to me. And then we move through to the second stage, which is often anger. And you might be looking for someone or something to blame. It's easy to blame our mum, maybe, because genetics are often to blame. So we can lash out at these dodgy genetics that we've inherited. And anger and frustration can also be directed inward to ourselves, angry at ourselves because what have we done to cause this to ourselves? So anger is the second stage. Then we come to the bargaining stage. And this is where we're looking for ways to circumvent our illness. And we might be bargaining with ourselves or with a higher power. So we might be praying to God, or what we might be saying something like, I promise I'll do this, this, and this if migraine will just go away. And we might question our choices or our actions, things we've done in our life that may have led to our illness. And then following on from that, we usually go through a stage of depression, feelings of isolation, sadness, hopelessness, feelings that we're never going to get through this stage. And these feelings and thoughts can really take over. And it can lead to potentially damaging behavior, like, we might be, I've had enough of this, I'm going to skip my medication, or I'm not going to go to my doctor's appointment, or I'm not going to do the things that I know I should be doing to help myself. And then finally, we come to this stage of acceptance. And it's a sense of knowing that although there's no cure for migraine, we can adapt and we can live with migraine, and we can live a better life than maybe what we are living if we're not in acceptance of this condition. And these feelings of loss or anxiety, they don't magically disappear, but once we learn coping strategies, we can overcome these emotions. And it doesn't happen overnight. It is a slow progress. It happens one day at a time, but it does happen. An analogy that I often like to use with my clients is an analogy of asthma. So if you know someone with asthma, you get the diagnosis, you have asthma, and you just accept it. It's something that you have. You need to live a certain life, you need to do certain things, take certain medications, and you can live a healthy and full life with asthma. And you might get a little bit breathless one day. You might have an attack where you're having to take a lot of medication another day, or it might be so bad that you're ending up in hospital on oxygen and steroids. And migraine is quite similar like this. Some days, you're living with migraine, you're absolutely fine. Another day, you might have a little bit of a headache, and then another day, you might be having a full attack, you're in bed at home, or it might be so bad that you're ending up in hospital needing an IV drip, antiemetics, pain relief, and things like that. So it's really on a spectrum, and you're living with this condition that is actually with you all the time, but it varies in how it presents from day to day. So once we've gotten to this acceptance stage, we need to do everything we can to learn about migraine, join support groups, and filter out this internal negativity by surrounding ourselves with positive people and people with knowledge about the condition. And also find a creative outlet that you can enjoy and use this as a distraction. And we'll talk more about this as we progress through the course. The next thing I want to talk about is self-awareness. And another word for this is interoception, when we look into our body and try to perceive what we're feeling, how our body's responding. So we really want to tune into our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. And this way we can train the brain to default to a relaxation response, not a stress response. And we talk about stress responses at multiple points throughout the course because it's really important that we get control over this response, that we don't just let our body do what it wants. We need to perceive what's happening in our body and have a plan of how to control the situation so we're not just defaulting to that stress response. And as I say, we'll discuss this a lot more in the nervous system and the stress sections. If you're feeling stuck in recurrent pain and suffering, fixating on this will actually make the pain worse by sensitizing the nervous system. So this is something to be really aware of, and it's why self-awareness is so important and why we touch on this so many times throughout the course. A quick and easy thing you can do is focus on your breathing, and that helps to increase your resilience against migraine attack. It's not going to make the attack go away, but when you feel that stress level increasing, sometimes that can be a trigger for an attack, and focusing on the breathing, if you can get that in early enough, can really increase that resilience. So one of the breath practices that I love to teach is breathing in for 4 and out for 6 for about 3 minutes. But there's so many different breathwork practices, and I share a lot of those different ones on my social media pages, and also we've got a whole lesson in this course on breath, so we can look forward to that later on. The next thing I wanted to talk about was what I call migraine confidence. So we know migraine can erode our self-confidence and our belief that we have control because it readily disrupts our plans, our progress, our aspirations. But we need to take that control back over our life, and we need to build back our confidence. We need to be organized, prepared, and have a plan so that we can do the things that we want to do without migraine getting in the way. So with knowledge and understanding, we can be confident that we can live our best life in spite of migraine. So some of the things you can do here is visualize yourself succeeding. So whether it's, an exercise that you want to do, it might be work that you want to achieve, whatever it is, whatever your goals are in life, and you really feel that migraine is holding you back from achieving those goals, is when you're feeling well, just visualize yourself. And the more you do this, the more those patterns in the brain, the nerve pathways start to consolidate, and it actually makes it more likely to happen. The other thing we can do is break down where our goals are into small steps. And as you achieve one step and then the next step, really celebrate. And I call that celebrating your small wins, and eventually you'll get to those bigger wins. We need to regulate our emotions to avoid disappointment, and this comes back to self-awareness. So things aren't always going to go to plan, and that's just the way it is, and we need to be okay with that. We need to not go into a deep spiral every time that happens. And if we can tell ourselves, okay, this time it didn't work out, but on these other occasions it did, and I'll just keep trying again and we'll get there in the end. And a good way to do this is to observe other people's success stories. And a lot of people I've spoken to it's almost like a jealousy when you're reading what someone else has managed to achieve, but it's a really negative way to look at it. Instead, what we should do is look at what other people have managed to achieve and think, well, you know what? If they can do it, so can I. And we just need to work out how we can make it happen. And as I say, really being aware of what your goals are and what you want to achieve, and then breaking it down into smaller achievable steps and celebrating those wins along the way is a really good way to do it. And being in support groups that are really positive can help that. So not all support groups are positive. A lot of them focus on the negatives of their condition, and they're not going to be very helpful for you. So you want to be in support groups that are really, helping each other on and really reporting their successes, so you can really feel uplifted when you come out of those groups, whether they're online or in person. As we said, with celebrating your small wins, also remembering past successes. So things that you thought were unachievable that you finally managed to achieve. And you can really think about, what were the obstacles that you faced? What did you do to overcome those obstacles? How did you achieve that goal? And then you can use the lessons that you acquired there and put them in place for the next goal. So this goal setting is really important, and planning is really important when you have migraine. And with your goals, you do want to make them specific and achievable. And throughout the course, we'll go over the 6 seeds of success. And I really highly recommend that you make goals for each of those 6 seeds. And then also other things that you want to achieve in your life. And when you do achieve those goals, write them down, stick them on the wall, and when you achieve them, tick them off and celebrate. And I've just put we all know about SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and within a set time. So we need to make sure that our goals, that we do have a time frame, that they are something that we do really feel is achievable, something that we can measure that we have gotten to our goal. So an example might be, I want to be able to walk 5 kilometers by the end of the month. And so, yes, that's something that I can achieve. At the moment, I'm walking, let's say 2 or 3 kilometers, and then you can set your small steps. Each day I'm going to walk a little bit further. You can set that out, tick it off as you go, and then by the end of the month you can make sure that you're achieving that goal and then celebrate your win. So our mindset is really important, and today we're going to look at 2 different mindsets. So we've got fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Now, someone with a fixed mindset really believes that their intelligence and their health and everything about themselves is fixed and static, and it is what it is. Nothing's going to change, nothing's going to improve. They're intimidated by the success of other people. If they make a mistake, they hide that from other people, feeling ashamed about failures, unmotivated, avoiding challenges, gives up easily, has that negative self-talk voice in their head, and really views feedback as a personal attack. So this is not going to lead to positive change. So instead, we need to try to achieve a growth mindset. So I've written there, hello growth mindset, here we come. And we need to believe that we can improve through effort and through learning all parts of our being. Our intelligence, our talents, our health, our fitness is all able to be improved. And that setbacks will happen, but they're a necessary part of moving forward. And that we can embrace the challenge and accept failure and know that we're just going to keep putting in the effort to get to where we want to be. And like I said before, when we're looking at other people's success, we see that as inspiration, that we can get there too. And people giving us feedback is an opportunity for us to grow and develop. Now, we need to accept what we really can't change. So some things are fixed, like the fact that we have migraine. We've accepted that already, but we know that there's a lot that we can do to manage the way that migraine presents in our body. So accepting what we can't change, and we're changing what we can. So it's really important to know the difference between those two. So several ways that we can develop a growth mindset. First of all, we need to understand about neuroplasticity. Our brains are built to grow and learn, and the more we challenge ourselves with new experiences, we will form and strengthen neural connections and actually rewire our brains. Now, we need to catch ourselves when we're in a fixed mindset. It happens to us all. We're not purely growth mindset or purely fixed. We'll hopefully tend towards growth mindset, but we need to catch ourselves when we're finding ourselves in that fixed mindset and just remind ourselves that it's unhelpful. We're not going to progress while we're thinking like this, and gently moving ourselves back across to the growth mindset. We need to remove that inner voice, the negative inner voice that is acting against the growth mindset. Our bodies, we know they don't like change, but we need to make change, because if we don't make change, we're going to be stuck where we are here in another year, 5 years, 10 years, however long. So we need to flip those thoughts. I can't do this. It's not going to work. To I can keep doing this. I will keep trying. I will get there eventually. And we're going to nurture that growth mindset. And what the research has shown is people with a growth mindset have actually experienced less suffering and better active coping skills. So it really is worthwhile working on that. The next thing that's really important is connection. Migraine can be very isolating because we retreat into, when we're having an attack, we're in our dark room, we want to be by ourselves in the quiet, avoiding sensory input, and we often avoid social activities due to fear of migraine. But connection, particularly social connection, is so important. And it's difficult because migraine is predominantly an invisible disease, and most people don't understand the condition. But social connection has been shown to increase happiness, regulate stress and anxiety, relieve pain, improve memory, immunity, self-esteem, and so much more. So we really need to find ways to bring that social connection into our lives. And as I've already said, pre-planning is a really important way to go about this. So I often talk about values, and one of my values is social connection. And I think it is super important for us to all try to get that social connection. But what I want you to do is to know your values and take action that's in line with your values at the same time as honoring your migraine limits. So we need to realize that our actions are always moving us towards or away from our values. So our social connection example of this. So one of our values, like mine, is friendship. Friendship's really important. But our action might be we avoid spending time with our friends because we fear a migraine attack. So that's moving us away from our value. Or we could organize an outing or an event with our friends that is migraine friendly, which is moving us towards our value. So an example from my life is, rather than going out with my friends that like to go out and have cocktails in the evening, I would tend to say no to that because I know that that will trigger a migraine attack. So therefore I'm missing out on that social connection. What I do is get in touch with my friends and maybe organize a brunch or a breakfast or a walk on the beach or something like that. So I'm still getting that social connection, but it's something that is honoring my migraine limits. It's not going to trigger an attack. So best of both worlds. Now back to our connections. We need to build our connections in multiple areas. So that might be family, in your intimate relationships, friendships, work colleagues, and might even be daily interactions. So it might be at school drop-off or pick-up, when you grab a coffee from the coffee shop, chatting to your barista. It might be support groups online if you're really having trouble getting outside. So there's many different ways we can get that social connection, and it's so important. And I love this. A hug has been shown to release a cascade of protective hormones and neurotransmitters. So always making time for a hug if you can. Lastly, I want to talk about compassion, and really I want to talk about self-compassion. We need to acknowledge that the way we feel is a natural reaction to suffering. So we have accepted that we have migraine, we are going to get migraine attacks, and we are going to get down on ourselves about that. And we need to be compassionate because feeling that way is natural. We just need to make sure that we don't get stuck in that mindset. So self-compassion involves acting the same way towards yourself when you're having a difficult time, or you're failing an activity, or you're noticing something you don't like about yourself. Instead of just ignoring that pain with that stoic mentality, you need to stop and tell yourself, actually, this is really difficult right now. I am suffering right now. How can I comfort and care for myself in this moment? And I often say to my clients, treat yourself like you would a small child. If a small child came to you and they were suffering, you wouldn't get angry with them or send them on their way. You would bring them in, you'd give them a hug, you'd help them as best you can. So treating yourself like that, giving yourself the love that you need and the permission, it's okay to feel this way, and help yourself. It might be getting a hot pack, a cup of tea, spending some time just sitting with your feelings before thinking, okay, I need to move on and out of this so I don't get into that downward spiral. So self-compassion involves acting the same way towards yourself when you're having a difficult time as when you're having a good time. So that's often a difficult one. It's all good when things are all good and everyone's happy to be, have that nice positive self-talk going on in your head. But when you're suffering, when you've got migraine, when things aren't going so well, that's when that negative chatter can pop up. So we need to be aware of that. And when things are difficult, remember, it's okay to say, it's difficult right now. It's okay. I can comfort and care for myself in this moment and accept that I'm having a difficult time. Instead of judging and criticizing, self-compassion is being kind and understanding towards yourself. You may try to change in ways that allow you to be more healthy and happy, but this is done because you care about yourself, not because you believe you are unacceptable as the way you are. So it's really important with migraine, once we've accepted the condition, that when we do courses like this and we're putting all these changes in place, we're doing them with self-compassion to be the better version of ourselves, not because we're trying to fix ourselves. And it's really important to understand the difference between those two. So that's it. I can see our mindsets are uploading. We're changing already. Lots to take in with this lesson. And it's probably one of those lessons that it would be worth watching a few times over, because every time it'll resonate a little bit differently for you depending on where your mindset is at that current time.